when I was a little kid, like people are really surprised when they hear that I was a really shy kid. I was shy and quiet and I hid behind my mom's legs all the time. Part of it came from, I learned early on in school that outgoing, confident, jokey personality was a thing that was going to make me accepted.
I'm echoing a lot with a lot of what you're saying. I too was an extremely shy child, and people don't believe me when I say that. I think that one of the things that I hide is how sensitive I really am inside.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
And so both of us are doing that. And somewhere along the lines, we've believed that that is not a part of ourselves that can come out of hiding.
See, this is so funny.
I know.
Because usually you go, hello, Mary.
Well, do you want me to do that?
Yeah.
Hello, Mary.
I think our viewers and listeners expect that.
All right. Well, I will give you what you want.
Yes.
Hello, Mary. How are you?
Hello, Gillian.
How are you? You're looking very nice in that denim jacket.
Well, I'm sorry that you didn't get to wear yours.
Because we did coordinate today.
We didn't want to be matchy-matchy.
No.
Yeah.
So, I have this funny thing that happened the other day.
What's that?
Well, you know that I live with the grandson.
Yeah.
Right?
Cutie
and you know
patootie.
that I'm trying to be a really strong, grandma that, allows him to just be a child. So he brought me a dead mouse.
Oh my gosh.
In his hand. And he says he wanted to keep it because it was so cute.
Oh. Was it a smushed dead mouse?
No, it was I don't know what happened to it. I think maybe a bird dropped it or something, but it was fine.
It was intact.
Yeah.
Okay. So I can see the cuteness.
Very cute, very cute. But I had to say, oh, it is so cute, but we've got to go wash your hands.
And you went.
Yeah. And then an hour later, he breaks out in a big rash. The mouse had fleas.
Oh, no.
And he got flea bites.
Oh, no.
But Dr. Google can lead you astray. Because Dr. Google was telling us about this virus you can catch from rodents.
Oh, my gosh. So you're going into the worst case scenario
We were
here.
pretty much, yeah. Anyway, so the other day, you know what he brought me?
What?
A whole pile of dead bugs. All mixed together. Dragonflies, earwigs, and a whole pile
amazing.
of wasps.
Amazing. Well,
And I had to go, that's really beautiful.
Normally you're like...
I know. And I know you and bugs.
I know.
You'd be buzzing.
I'm a little bit triggered here. Why are we talking about bugs?
Well, to trigger you. To take the sting out of what we're going to talk about.
The mouse was okay. I can handle cute little furry mouse, even though if they're dead. But bugs
I know.
I don't like.
And that's why I wanted to unnerve you a little bit before we had to.
You were trying to lower my defenses, but actually, it's increasing my defenses.
Okay, so we're talking about Chapter 2 of Dr. Henry Cloud's book, Never Again, or Never Go Back, I should say. And this chapter is called Never Again Do Anything That Requires You to Be Someone You Are Not. Right in the solar plexus, right, Mary?
It's totally.
So
I didn't like reading this chapter.
Okay, well,
I did and I didn't. You know what? I did because I'm pain, obviously. No, because I really it was hitting home.
Okay.
And it was good.
Okay.
It was a good reminder.
Well, I will tell you that one of the biggest obstacles that I find when I'm doing coaching with clients is people get stuck, right? And they get stuck for a whole bunch of reasons. And we kind of need to explore that. But one of the reasons that people get stuck is they're posing as someone they're not. And they wonder if the true me comes out, if I let the true me out, will I still be accepted? Will I still be loved? Will I still be thought of well, respected? And so people can get into this place where they're afraid of their true self coming out.
Yeah.
Because they have been playing someone they're not.
Right. And just for our listeners and viewers to have grace, if that's hitting home for you, because I've had to really work through that, is that it does come from a place of longing.
Yeah.
We long to belong. We really We're wired to belong. We're wired to be in relationship. We just long to belong. And if I learned early on that being a particular type of personality or presenting myself a certain way would help me to feel like I belong, then it's hard to resist.
Oh,
but
yeah.
we've talked about this before in other episodes. There's a difference between fitting in
Yes.
versus belonging, because fitting in is you are taking on the behaviors and the traits or whatever the rules you think you have to follow
Yeah.
to fit into a particular group.
That's right.
Whereas belonging is you can show up as your true self, warts and all,
Yeah.
your messiness,
Yeah.
and still feel like you belong. And that is just the deepest need that I think we all have.
Well, I think when Dr. Henry says that's when your real self, your true self, can come out of hiding, when you have that sense of belonging. But if you're just trying to fit in, you have to hide your true self.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. Well, a lot of times we aren't even aware that we're doing it because those strategies of fitting in start from a very, very early age.
Oh my goodness.
Like I think about myself when I was a little kid, like people are really surprised when they hear that I was a really shy kid. I was shy and quiet and I hid behind my mom's legs all the time. And they're surprised. And yes, I've learned confidence and I have realized I do like to talk. But part of it came from, I learned early on in school that outgoing, confident, jokey personality was a thing that was going to make me accepted.
Yes.
And so is that really who I am? And I think, yes, because I think as I've matured, I've had the freedom to be silly and not care what people think.
Right.
But at the same time, it's also been kind of a really reflection of why I don't let the other part of myself show as much, which is the quieter, more reflective, serious part of my personality. So it's interesting. And I also happen to be 2s, 3s, and 4s on the Enneagram, the heart-centered types, especially 3s, I would say, but 2s as well.
Yeah.
We have a real ability to adapt ourselves to the current situation because our longing to be accepted and loved is so strong.
Right.
And so I've often wondered, like, the fact that I am so adaptable, like I literally will take on people's accents when I'm talking with them. I'll follow their body language. I have a lot of mirror neurons, I like to say.
Oh, well.
Which means that I can pick up on the cues and I just automatically, I don't even do it on purpose. I just start to kind of flow with them. And that's part of how I connect with people so well. And I think it's a gift, but I think it also does cause me to go into these places where I'm putting it on because I think that's what the other person wants.
Like, okay, so first of all, I've never heard you talk in an accent, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, because you don't speak in an accent.
I could.
Well, if you did, I'd start speaking in one too. I'm not saying I do it well.
Okay.
I'm just saying I pick up on some of the little nuances. And if somebody's very serious and they're talking seriously, then that's what I do too.
Yeah.
But that's why I often have people go, oh, you're just like me. I'm like, oh, not really. Part of it is, like I said, I think it's a gift of how I can connect well with people. So there's some intentionality with it. And it's just because my personality is a little bit more sort of fluid, if I can put it that way. And there are others who are listening who are the same way. So it's not a bad thing. But I think there is times where I know in my gut, I can feel that there's a disconnect between what I'm presenting to the world versus what's really happening inside.
Right.
And for me, one of the biggest ones is pretending like I'm okay, pretending like things don't bother me, pretending like I'm not as sensitive as I actually am.
Right.
Because I grew up where showing strength means to laugh it off or to not cry. I mean, I was a very sensitive kid, so I cried a lot, and I got feedback to not be a crybaby. So I learned early on to stop doing that.
Yeah, and I'm echoing a lot with a lot of what you're saying. I too was an extremely shy child, and people don't believe me when I say that. And there are parts of me that are still very shy. That's that vulnerability piece, right? I know that. But I think that one of the things that I hide is how sensitive I really am inside.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
And so both of us are doing that. And somewhere along the lines, we've believed that that is not a part of ourselves that can come out of hiding.
Right.
And that's sad.
It is sad, actually.
It's really sad. So I think
Yes.
that when Dr. Cloud talks about this, one of the things that I hear in coaching clients is people don't even really know who they are. And, or they'll tell me it's not safe for them to show up in a relationship or an environment the way they truly are. And that should go back to chapter 1. You know, never go back to something that hasn't worked before. So if you're in an environment where you actually don't feel safe,
Yeah.
you've got to ask some hard questions about that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, if you grew up in an environment where you either had a lot of rules or you got negative feedback, I mean, this is part of the work that I love doing with people who are neurodiverse is a lot of, I'm assessing a lot of adults who have a great ability to mask, and it's helped them cope in a neurotypical world. But the problem is it comes at a huge cost. They're exhausted because they're trying to fake their way through it. And when I finally say to them, I see you, and you don't have to pretend with me, they often are in tears.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, I that's part of what I love. I love to call out that you get to be who you are, your true self. And you don't have to make apologies for the fact that you're quirky and different and weird and all those words that I think are actually beautiful words.
Yeah.
But I think that's the challenge, is that we fight so hard to fit in, or we get these negative messages for being an outlier.
Yes.
That we do everything possible to fit into that box.
That's right.
And that's not good for us. The world needs us to show up as our true selves.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say is that there's this, listeners, you'll get this. There's this kind of praise for extroverts, but this kind of shunning for introverts.
Yeah.
Why?
I know.
Like, it's so funny to me that we've chosen that to pick on. And it's really interesting. You know that I'm heavily involved in dog stuff.
Yeah.
And we had this one dog who was an introvert.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's lots of introverted dogs. So we would take her to, the dog park, and she would scan the park, look for the biggest, most threatening dog, and go and sit beside them.
Interesting.
And it was like, if I'm over here with this guy, no one's going to play with me or want to play with me.
You'll leave me alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she was an introverted dog. She didn't want to be in a pack. And, I'm thinking about how many times as introverts, people are told that's not okay.
Right.
So then you have to put on these behaviors. How exhausting is that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's true. And I think that that's actually a really good question to ask yourself. Like, in your life, in which environments do you feel the most exhausted? That takes the most effort for you, that you have to show up in a particular way. If it's your home, that really saddens me, for sure.
Truly.
Because that ought to be a place of rest for you.
Yeah.
So there might be some changes that have to happen.
Yeah.
But wherever it is, I think paying attention to that is at least being able to acknowledge that maybe you've been faking it a little bit. And again, lots of grace for yourself. There's a reason why you had to. It's part of your survival. It's part of what has helped you get through. But it's time for the real you to start coming out. And you may not know who that is. And just consider it, like we've talked about before, like a journey of discovery. It's experimenting. There is the Enneagram, of course. There's other personality measures. There's lots of ways. There's coaching, whatever it is. One thing we just did this past weekend is we're going through this process of study together as a small group. And one of the questions we were talking about is, what were you like as a little kid? And we talked about the word birthright. Like, who is your birthright person? And I was listening with empathy and some sadness too, because I knew that that person is in each one of us.
That's right.
But yet there was the sense that there wasn't a permission for that birthright person to come out.
Yeah, that's right. And, the flip side of that is this idea that Dr. Cloud calls flow. Now, there's been a lot of research on flow, right? He didn't coin this phrase. It comes out of a lot of scientific research. But flow is that time in your life when you were lost in the thing to such an extent that it brought you joy and a sense of this is who I am. And all the work that you had to do to get there was worth it because you felt like your true self. And that's this place of flow. So along with the places where you feel pain and exhaustion, where do you feel flow?
That's a really great question.
Where do you lose sense of time?
Yeah.
It could be in a creative process. It could be when you're just out in nature, or writing a book or whatever it might be. But because that's part of your birthright.
Well, what would be your flow?
My flow, actually, years ago, it used to be in the darkroom when I was processing my own film. I loved that. I would lose all sense of time because you're watching something come to life. I think flow for me now is in nature, doing, even if I'm with people, doing a solitary thing. Like when we were off on our e-bikes last week, I felt like it was on my own, even though I was with a pack, or out in the kayak, or walking the dog, or whatever. That's part of my flow.
Can I tell you where I've seen you flow as well?
Sure.
I love watching you when you're doing training or presentations.
Oh, I love that too.
Oh, you are so alive.
I love it.
You are captivating. You capture the audience. You're able to connect with them individually. You teach so well in a way that just makes sense to people. They don't even realize they're being taught.
Well, thank you for that.
No, honestly,
But
that
true.
is such an important thing for you to remember. So yes, you have that quiet, reflective, introverted side of you, but you've also got this beautiful, this energy, this charisma that allows you to show up in spaces and to connect with people, to really reach them, to share powerful messages that are inspiring.
Well, going back to the shyness thing for both of us, people can be shy and be entertaining.
That's true.
And people can be shy and in front of a group.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. We are complex beings.
Truly.
Yeah. So I don't think finding your true self isn't about
It's this
I
or that.
am this.
Yeah.
Period. There's lots of flow for that. The other thing that Henry Cloud says, which I think is really, really important, that is in the process of trying to figure out your flow, who your true self is recognize when you are intentionally being in situations where you know you're not being able to be your true self.
Yeah.
So, for example, you're working in a job that you're not feeling the flow. It's drudgery. It's difficult.
Yeah.
But because your values are so important for you to be able to provide an income to take care of your family, you're willing to do the sacrifice.
Yes.
So it's not that there aren't times in our lives where we're going to do things that cost us. I mean, I think, my husband Peter is a really great example. He is such a faithful, hardworking, can push through doing things that he really doesn't enjoy doing because he loves his family so very much, and he would do anything for them. And so that's such a strong value for him.
Yes.
That he's willing to do that sacrifice.
He says what he's not saying. I like that when in the chapter, he says, what am I not saying?
Right.
He says, it's not me.
Right.
We all have seasons of sacrifice where we suck it up and do stuff that's not us. But remember, we are doing it usually sacrificially out of a place of love and care. Sacrificing for the right motives is the backbone of both character and love.
Oh, I love that. And I would say also sacrifice for the long term. So if I have a particular goal, like getting through grad school I still have trigger, especially doing the dissertation. It was not a fun experience, aspects of it. Yet it was really worth it because it got me to where I am today. So there are going to be situations where you purposely choose to struggle and suffer and not flow because you have a longer term goal that you have in mind.
That's right.
It has to be worth it for you.
And one of the things he says, he is not saying that no relationship would require you to set aside a part of you or goal. He says that in every relationship, we have to put parts, or even in situations, we have to put parts of ourselves in storage for a season. Making relationships work requires sacrifice. Making sacrifices for another often means we are actually more of ourselves, true to what we value and love.
Oh, wow.
So that's back to your Peter. I mean, he's doing things, he's putting some of his own discomfort in storage because the bigger value is the love he has for his family.
Yeah, and it still defines him to today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, when it comes down to it, what is he saying? How do you know yourself? Do you know your strengths, your unique gifts? Do you know how God wired you? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, and that's a journey right there. So this episode's obviously not going to answer all those questions. I think if the first thing you can begin to identify is the masks that you're wearing, the places where you feel constrained to be a certain way, where you're so careful about what you say and do, that those would be the places that I think is important to at least lean into that. So you have a sense of where you need to start to reflect. Think back to places where you've had flow, but also think back to times and situations where you've handled it and kind of went, I didn't like the way I handled it. I didn't like how that went. And when you are doing that reflection, then you can find the parts of yourself, the true parts of yourself that would have handled it differently if you didn't feel compelled to be a certain way that ends up not working for you.
Yeah. A couple of questions that he asked, which I thought were really, really good. Why am I doing this? Is it a sacrifice I'm supposed to make? Am I suited for this thing? Does it fit me? And is it sustainable? Or is this something that's just a season of storage? Right?
And then the broader question is whatever I choose to do, whatever relationship I choose to invest in, can I still do this and still be me?
Oh.
Wow.
That's huge.
I know.
That's taken us a long time to even wrestle with and still wrestle with. So listeners, you can tell that this is digging in on ourselves too. And I'm sure it's digging in with you. And again, I mean, these are just big questions we need to be asking ourselves so that we can work towards health and growth in our own life. So that we can know what exhausts us, what provides flow in our lives, and where we can make some adjustments.
And I would add that when you do the work of living out of your true self and figuring that out, that you actually are doing not just a service to yourself, but to others.
True.
Because you're much more able to give generously of yourself and to impact in a positive way when you are flowing out of your gifts and your natural self. And Henry Cloud says this, I think this is so great. In order to give your life to others, you must first have a life to give.
Oh, that's...
Right? And if you're giving up your life out of pressure from others, or because you're in denial about exchanging who you are for something you think you want, then that's not at all what he's talking about.
No.
So you have to have a life to give. So what is your life? Who are you? Right?
I like, really, you could underline and highlight every sentence of this book.
I know. Anyway, so that's a really good reflection for this episode. I think that's a lot to think about. I'm going to be chewing on this one for a while. Me too. Because I already know the things that exhaust me. I can name them. Right. It could be also things that you've gone back to. That could be why you're exhausted. Oh, thank you. Oh, 1 and 2. Come on, let's talk about the 2 chapters together. Oh, yeah. They all build. 1-2 punch. Boom, boom. I know, right? Good stuff. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Fully Lived Life podcast. We hope you found it encouraging and helpful. Be sure to follow or subscribe so that you never miss a new episode. And if you enjoyed our show, please help spread the word by sharing with your friends and family and posting on your social media. Thanks for listening, and tune in to our next episode.